Everybody, this is 𝙎𝙐𝙋𝙋𝙊𝙍𝙏, your host with the Freedom Report. First video I've done in a couple of weeks. Part of that was because I was traveling. I was just busy helping build a market. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do in this episode. At the end, we have about a 15 to 20 minute legislative update with Daniel Diaz, Executive Director of Citizens for Sound Money, where we're working in multiple states now to get gold and silver, or gold specifically, but gold and silver passed to sound money at the state level to actually build a working gold and silver economy. Do not stop watching this video till you get there, please. In fact, that's the most important part of this video, because it goes beyond just my research and getting active out there and doing things that are actually going to make gold and silver money again, to support everything that you guys have been learning watching this channel and all the other great YouTube channels on the subject. So stay tuned to the end before I sign off and go through that legislative update. It's critically important. Now, on this episode, I'm also going to take a few minutes and talk about PDAC. I went to the Prospector and Developer Association in Canada meeting up in Toronto this past weekend. I didn't stay the whole week, but I stayed a couple of days. Did a lot of networking. I'm going to tell you about the mining stocks. I'm going to tell you about what the market looks like. So stay tuned for that. And then I'm going to give you a gold report. However, I'm not going to do data here. I'm going to talk about the worldwide gold movement and what I think is going on. And this is going to be a follow-up from my last video 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I talked about, and the title of that video was The Great Worldwide Gold Heist is On. And a lot of people are saying that the United States is repatriating gold because gold is flowing into COMEX. So I wanted to jump on that discussion. I'm going to tell you what I told people at PDAC. Then I'm going to tell you what I learned at PDAC. Then again, legislative update. So what I told people at PDAC and what has come out since, even in my last video, the last 2 weeks, is yes, there's a lot of gold flowing into the U.S. Yes, there's not as much available in London, the LBMA market and the OTC market. They were having a run and they had to slot people, and they're trying to manage that because they don't have enough free gold for all the claims on the gold. And so some of that has come over to the United States. Now, is the United States repatriating it for U.S. FedGov? I said possibly. Let's talk about that for just a minute. But I want to talk about what I think is the broader scenario going on. It's important. A lot of people want the positivity of the U.S. to have that gold. They want the comfort and the fuzziness that the U.S. has those 8,000 plus tons that we say we have in Fort Knox under the New York Fed and all these 4 or 5 different places that it's supposed to be, not just Fort Knox. It's 4 or 5 places that we have it. And no, we haven't had a formal, independent, transparent, the public can see it audit since the 1960s. And so that's led to a lot of speculation. And so naturally, when a lot of the gold started flowing into COMEX, people conflated that with the U.S. FedGov buying that gold. Well, first of all, they're not going to store it in COMEX. So if it doesn't come out of COMEX, it may not be the U.S.'s. In fact, probably a lot of it is not. And I'm not so sure that the U.S. would want that to be so public by doing it that way anyway. Think about it. If the U.S. had leased out that gold, which a lot of us suspect that they had through swaps or through leasing or through whatever they were doing to flood gold into the market, to one, support a lower price gold in the dollar, but also to use that to support, internal spending, which they probably have. We suspect that they have because of all these factors around why we don't know what's there and we don't have assurance. Well, why would they go then back through the public markets to get that gold back? They wouldn't. They would do this quietly. They would do this in the background. They would try to get their gold back on that. They would, if there is an agreement that they have to pay a cash sum to get their gold back because they're in the middle of a leasing agreement, and that person may not have the gold, or if they need to go buy new refined gold, they're going to do it on the down low. They're going to use proxies, and they're going to do it in a way which doesn't grab attention. Now, because Trump's administration and Trump himself has said multiple times, and Bessent has said that either they've seen the September audit of last year and they think it's good, or they're going to do an audit. I mean, think about it. Bessent said in September he saw it was there. Trump has specific, and other members of his team, his press secretary, have said they're going to go look at it. That's on video. Why would they need to go look at it if Scott had seen it in September and they really felt like it was all there? I'm not sure that would be the case, right? So stuff is not adding up with the fact of whether or not we have our gold. We're confident we have our gold. And it seems like a little bit of kabuki theater there and trying to reassure the public we have it, while at the same time they may be trying to go grab it. But I don't think it's all going to U.S. FedGov. Martin Armstrong went on USA Watchdog, and he was talking about the fact that every time it looks like there's going to be a major war or something, countries push their gold to a safe jurisdiction. It happened in World War II and various other times in history as well. And so, and he named off those times, and he was talking about how that worked. And I agree with him on my own research. So we know that sometimes when there is a hot war going on or severe economic war going on where somebody thinks that their gold could be at risk, it may move out. Or people may have have owned gold in these jurisdictions, they think that there may be some physical threat or some financial threat to it, and they're going to take it out of this jurisdiction and put it in a safe one. So think about why people go the dollar and bonds in history when we have economic problems, because it was seen as a safe haven. But now I think people are seeing their gold as the ultimate safe haven now. So if you've got gold stored over in London or stored in Europe, stored, with the Swiss or stored wherever, and you think that there's a potential war breakout because of the NATO-Russia thing, or you think there's a potential major crash in the economy and you're not sure if it's going to be safe over there, that somebody might not try to liquidate it or something, you never know. Or if you have suspicions that maybe the EFP mechanism or the ETF funds are basically part of a scheme to rehypothecate gold, meaning it's sold multiple times, you're going to go make your claim on your gold. Germany did that a few years ago. India's done that. Countries have done that, and individuals have done that. They may have, a private company may have it stored. Maybe they're a producer, maybe they're and they have it stored until they want to sell at their price, or maybe they're using the gold. So it's like one of these companies like Apple, Microsoft, somebody that uses silver, a medical company, they have it stored and then they use it, but they're a manufacturer. Or maybe somebody that's just storing their gold that's a wealthy family office, or maybe even some of these banks, some of the banks that have their own gold and silver storage. They may look at where it's at in that jurisdiction, see a threat to that jurisdiction, and want to pull it. And so Martin's theory was a lot of it coming over the U.S. is more private transactions or other sovereigns or other entities that may have a reason to own that gold and potentially silver as well. And they're putting it in the United States for safety reasons. And I think that's a big one. And I think that I go back to what I said at PDAC. I think it's a big game of musical chairs. We know that gold and silver, there are more paper claims between the derivatives and the OTC market and these two markets in the US and in the UK than there are the actual physical. We know that from testimony. We know that from the way that those markets are actually defined and traded. I mean, it's out in the public. It's black and white. We know this. So it may be that I suspect this big game of musical chairs going on where everybody's looking at the world, the economic problems, the potential war problems, all of those things that are occurring. And they're saying there's more uncertainty. I want my physical gold somewhere that's safe and near me. And so there's all this gold movement. And they also want to make sure that they get their physical, that they're not going to be that 10th paper claim on the same ounce that ends up getting settled into fiat that they don't want, or maybe they can't even get the fiat settlement right away because there's a run on the market. And so I think that's where it started in the LBMA, and I think it's continuing over into the COMEX. There's a lot of movement, but I think within that movement, it's not just that the gold is moving from one place to another. It's that gold is being claimed by someone to say, I'm the one that can move that gold. In other words, by moving the gold, people are asserting their legal claim to that physical, saying, I'm asserting my legal claim so that everybody else's legal claim does not count. And if I, through my legal claim, can get you to move it from your place to my place, then that gives me comfort that I'm the only legal claim on that gold. I own it, and I can physically get it from the place that I choose, that I trust, in a jurisdiction that's going to be safe. And that's what's happening, is everybody's trying to put in their physical claims to say, I want my gold. And that's why the run on LBMA is so instructive, because the LBMA was saying, well, we don't have everybody's gold that everybody wants to make a claim at once. And then people pulling it into COMEX, eventually there's not going to be enough from the rest of the world, from the Swiss and from Singapore and stuff, free gold. And when the game is up, it's going to be when there are more claims that all the physical is moved and there's no more physical to move. So this could take a year or two, because you got some mine production coming. You've got some free gold in these various markets that isn't specifically been assigned to someone. But once all of that has been claimed and there's no more, there's going to be an event on both of these markets where they say, we cannot deliver. And it may not be 8 weeks like on the LBMA, maybe 2 years, because it's been rehypothecated. It's been claimed multiple times. So we're getting to that point. We're getting to the end of that game at which more paper claims are coming in at a time than you have free physical gold that you can support it with. And then the Ponzi becomes very overt. It becomes very, everybody knows about it and everybody's talking about it. We're at the beginning of that process. And I think a lot of things are going on. I don't think it's just one thing or the other. I think it's a lot of things going on. And I do not feel better about the U.S. having their gold. I do not feel better that the COMEX has enough to meet all the potential claims that could come through. I do not feel good that any country that's trying to repatriate its gold, or any major player that's trying to get a lot of gold, are all going to be able to get their gold in time. And that extends to you, ladies and gentlemen, because if you think about it, if you're in retail right now in the US, retail is selling, taking profits, okay? So we see a lot of retail being pumped into the wholesalers to melt down or to resell. It's either scrapped and melted into their new product, Or if it's like an American Eagle, they're just going to turn around and resell it and take the jig on the resale. Their buy-ask spreads what they're going to make it on. And that is supplying excess gold and silver to the U.S. retail market right now. But that is only what people are willing to sell at these prices, taking profits. That is a drop in the bucket to what the demand could be once we have another war, a bank failure, or a financial issue. And so, for example, in the American market, there's only suspected about 300 million ounces free in silver. That's about an ounce for every person. So if every person in America just wanted 1 ounce, not the stackers wanting 1,000 or 2 or 3,000 or 5,000 or 6 pallets, but of 1,000-ounce bars. But if every person requires 1 ounce of silver, the U.S. market's bankrupt, and the London market doesn't have enough float to carry that. What if everybody wanted 2 ounces? That accounts for all free silver in the world that is known to exist right now. And plus, we have mining supply not equal to existing demand. If you add that demand on top, only from America, you would bankrupt basically most of the world's silver supplies. Modest demand. And again, if you start adding the rest of the world. So what can happen is this run can happen very quickly. It can happen very, very quickly on both gold and silver. So I think what you're going to see happen is pressure is going to be on these markets to price up. Now, the COMEX is down right now, and the COMEX is down because there's some short covering, and they're trying to discourage people from getting into gold and wanting to take it out. So they're keeping prices in a range and trying to convince people, leave it here for us. We will take care of it for you. And some is short contract covering by the banks. Some of it is panic and not trying to push out as much metal. Now, if they lower the price too much, it could actually become more attractive to stand for contracts. So there's this tension between the paper needing to keep the price in a range and that range making gold more attractive to people as the world gets crazier and crazier, as more uncertainty enters the world financially, politically, culturally, and the prices are kept down in the U.S. versus the rest of the world, which is what we're seeing at a retail level. That means more demand is going to come in to grab that gold from the U.S. It just hasn't happened yet. So as I look around the world, we're seeing reports of South Korea, Turkey, Russia, China having higher gold prices and silver prices than the U.S. And we're seeing the U.S. now at a retail level, accessible to the public. And so it's spot plus. So that spot plus that premium around the world is much higher. I just got off an email earlier today from a location in Turkey. That's a really robust market. A lot of people on gold there. There is so much demand going on because of what's going on in that area of the world that the premiums are much higher than they are in the U.S. So there's actually an arbitrage opportunity for markets in North Africa, in the Middle East, and in places like Turkey or in between to then ship that gold to satisfy demand where the prices are lower and they can make, so that's why another reason why gold's coming to America, because of the rest of the world other than London, has higher prices than the Western market, specifically in the COMEX. So it's flowing there because it's finding buyers. And eventually when Americans catch on to that and that additional retail demand from Americans catches up, as they start to realize what's going on in the economy, they'll turn from net sellers to net buyers on the retail level. So we're at that place where we're starting to get to these end stages of that Ponzi system. And I think it's multiple players in it. Now, getting on to mining stocks at PDAC, because I promised I would. We're about 13 minutes into the gold silver report. I wanted to talk to you about mining. So I went to talk to several miners. I gave a presentation there at PDAC at 2 p.m. at the Investor Leader Forum. I talked to several people. I talked briefly with Chen Lin and Jeff Clark, just very briefly. I talked with other people out on the floor much more in detail about what's going on. A couple of newsletter writers who didn't want to be mentioned, and then a bunch of CEOs, CFOs, even some drillers and equipment suppliers. I talked to China Gold. I talked to Impact Silver. I briefly talked to the people from A-Mark, I believe, and some other companies I've interested in. I won't mention them all. I focused on gold and silver. One thing I'll tell you about PDAC. PDAC is the largest mining conference in the world. It's the Prospector and Developer Association Canada, I believe is the name. It's where everybody, and it's an association. It's a third-party association that's an industry trade group. So it's not like VRIC or Silver Symposium in that it's an investor conference. It's more of a trade conference, which has an investment component. But a lot of investors go to PDAC because they want to talk to all these companies because they come from around the world. And literally, no matter where you are in the supply chain for either precious metals or regular commodities, whether you're digging it out of the ground or you've got the finished product, like Sprott has the gold and silver, they have a fund, or Royal Canadian Mint, the whole supply chain shows up to PDAC. So it is a good barometer in March of every year about the health of this industry and what's gone on in the previous year and the look ahead. And that's why I go every year. And I'm also fortunate to be asked to speak. So I appreciate the organizers of PDAC allowing me to speak. So I go and I talk to all these companies, and there were less exhibitors at PDAC. We had wider aisles, which means on the 2 or 3 floors that it takes up of the Toronto Convention Center every year, because it's the biggest one, the big granddaddy, right? There were less exhibitors. And so there's more space. Like you could walk and it was like a truck's worth of space. You could drive a truck down these aisles. And we all noticed that. A lot of CFOs and CEOs were at the conference telling me there's less people here. And a lot of companies I'm used to seeing weren't there. They weren't spending the money for a booth, because the investment sentiment in the mining stocks is a bit low, especially in the American side. Now, there is some frothiness in the mining stock indexes. You can see some of the majors getting some play. The juniors are really suppressed right now. And we know that typically the majors will go first and then the juniors. So this is not out of the ordinary. But the feeling was that we may be at the bottom, because the conference last year, when I went last March, it was a little slower than normal. It was a lot slower than normal now, which means sentiment is low, which is about the time you want to start to invest. If you're a long-term investor in mining stocks, since it's such a speculative investment, your cost basis is super important, especially where a lot of these are going to go bust. You could buy 10 stocks and 9 go bust. All 10 could go bust. Buyer beware. Do your own research. This is very risky. I'm not telling you to get involved. I'm telling you the nature of the market and what I heard. You must do your own research, consult your own financial advisor. Please, please, please. Very risky in the mining stocks. But when they go boom, they go boom. And even if you only had one 10-bagger in your portfolio and a couple of 3 or 4-baggers and the rest were duds, if you dollar cost average that out, you're probably done pretty good. So this is the game of playing the mining stocks. And the money has not started to come in yet. The public isn't buying in the US especially, or in North America, what's going on. And so the bullion needs to go first. Gold's already gone. Silver's gone a little, but not a lot. But you really need that fear catalyst, that war or that bank failure or that financial system fear catalyst. And then you'll see, and then the generalist investors will notice gold and silver commodity prices going up so much that they'll start to talk to their generalist and the general investor, like news writers and bankers and stuff, will start to tell the generalist investors who their money is coming in to be invested with, I'm going to start putting into mining stocks. Look at these returns for the last year. So we're before the mining stocks launch, but we've had the gold launch, all-time highs 5 or 6 times in the last year. Silver has got through that $30 level. It's sitting, 32 to 33, 34. It's very healthy. And so really we just need that catalyst. And the shift in flows around the world of the actual physical is telling us that the big money players have figured out the game is afoot for the gold, and that they want to get it out of risky jurisdictions, and that they want to repatriate, or they want to grab theirs, because they know how many paper claims are on it, how many additional claims are on versus the actual physical. Watch my last video for a lot of detail on how that works, because I did it in the Great Gold Heist video 2 weeks ago. So if you know that and the big players are moving, what happens next? Retail always comes after the big players. And what that's also saying is the big players in the system, because they're probably business owners and big, and they have access to all this data, they know the economy is weakening. So they know the economy is weakening. They got to get the gold, which is the asset or the money of last resort, and that they get in before the smaller guys get in. So you guys typically will get in. You're more of a herd, not to insult anybody. I know there's a lot of smart people out there, but in general, the average man is a herd investor. That's why people are still in tech stocks right now. That's why people are going and investing in meme coins, because they're herd investors. The majority of people are herd investors. You guys who are in gold and silver early are not. You're the opposite. You're the long-term value investors that look at things like bond investors do, and really sophisticated stock and real estate investors do. You guys are smart, right? And then a few of you have probably just glommed on and said, I'm trying to learn, but I'm going to buy a little. You guys are ahead of the curve. Okay, but you're such a small 2% portion of this market. When the other 98% or the other 50x of you gets involved is when you start to see the launches. So if you're in now, don't be frustrated. You're in at a good time for what we're looking at in the market. And this confirmation of all these gold flows, the repatriation, everybody claiming theirs, the musical chairs, the repatriation, the problems we had in the London market, the problems we will have see come to the COMEX when we realize they're also bankrupt from the perspective that they don't have enough physical to do the futures claims that may want to stand and that have been standing since December and well into February, now into March. What you're going to see is you're going to see those shortages and that bankruptcy occur, and you're going to see a mad rush into gold and silver from everybody else. And that's where we are. And that could take some time to get there, but I think it's going to. And once those catalysts start falling, the next bank failure, the next big political thing, the next big hot war, The more risk that is introduced into this world, the more companies that go out of business, the more reduction in spend of the U.S., the more noise around cutting costs and the desperation of governments, the more you see these markets crater, the more you see the political people around the world get really extreme with their policies that you haven't seen in 50, 60, 70 years. All of this is a sign of strain, of grinding of the gears of our society from a cultural, political, and economic perspective. And it's where you're going to see people flood into gold and silver. And we're in those stages where all that machinery is just grinding on each other. Repo market almost bankrupt, trying to work on the long end of the treasury curve, talking about 50-year bonds or perpetual bonds to refinance that debt and get America out of hot water, talking about the hot wars, Trump wanting to get out of NATO countries like England supporting Ukraine and wanting to put their own troops on the ground and dragging the U.S. into a war, which would become a world war. All of these things are adding to the pile where everybody's like gold, 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 and silver, 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 silver. And so all of these are catalysts. And I think we're seeing all of those things. And this is the understanding we need to have. It's the holistic understanding, if you're in this market, to understand what is going on and how you protect yourself. Do your research. I'm giving you all these data points to get you thinking critically about what is going on to protect yourself. Now I'm going to do another quick couple of minutes on prepping, and then we're at legislative update right after this. Don't leave. We're about 22 minutes. I'll try to keep this under about 40 total. I've been talking about doing some preparation type videos. I'm going to give you the 2-minute speech. Right now, if you feel as though you have enough gold and silver, and that's an individual choice, make your own choices, do your own research. But if you feel like you're there on gold and silver, my suggestion, or at least what I would do in that situation, I can say what I would do, is I would start making sure I secured my water, my shelter, the safety of my family, that I'm spiritually gotten myself in the right place. Because when you go through hard times, I'm a Christian, so I'll read the Bible. People do what you want to do. I encourage people to read the Bible. If you have a conversation with me on that, email me and we'll have a conversation. But spiritually, get yourself right. Make sure that you're right with your family. Get all of those ducks in a row, because when we go through hard times, everything gets tested. You want to make sure you have food and water, and that you're safe, and that you have money to repair your car, and you have the supplies that you need. You have your meds and things like that. We'll talk more about that in the program as we go forward. But then also you're living in a jurisdiction which you think is going to remain mostly free, which you're going to have rights of movement. You're going to have networking, be able to get what you want. Those are also considerations. And then just make sure that you're getting involved in this fight to make gold and silver money again. Very shortly, Daniel's going to come on. We're going to talk about all the states that Citizens for Sound Money is working in, which I'm on the board of directors, and he's our executive director, on boots on the ground. And we're going to show you how you can get involved. Just because you have the gold and silver doesn't mean you're going to be able to spend it in the way that you think and get all that value out of it. We need to do more action at the state level so that when all this stuff comes down, the gold and silver that you have becomes the money that you need, and you're not, demonized for it. It's not criminalized. It shouldn't be, but that's kind of where we've gone in the last 112 years since the Federal Reserve came out and all these laws, changed. We still have the right in the Constitution for gold and silver as money, but we have to fight at the state level. So we need to create that environment in which the gold and silver you have or have been investing in or are considering investing in is then usable in the way in which you want, or else it's just going to be, a paperweight for you in a lot of cases. So stay tuned. Right now, I'm going to jump over to Daniel. We're going to talk about the legislative update. Stay there. You can help us. You don't necessarily have to give money. There's other ways you can help, but get in that fight. It's not just about educating yourself. It's getting in the fight to let your government know what you want and get them to do what you need them to do, so that when the time comes, you can use that gold and silver in the way that you need to. Let's go talk to Daniel right now. Hey everybody, this is Rob from the Freedom Report, back with Daniel with Citizens for Sound Money. He is our executive director, and he's going to give us an update on the legislative efforts and what's going on with regards to all the states we're trying to get gold as money again. Daniel, thanks for joining the program again. How are you?
I'm good, Rob. Thank you for having me on again. A lot has been happening since the last update that I've done with you on your show. I want to start with Florida first. Florida is going along very well. We're working with another group that is looking to push gold and silver as well. We've been working with them since last year. And it seems like leadership is, I'm not going to say 100% on board, but like 95% on board. We have our bill, which is SB 132, and the other bill, HB 999. They're similar, but leadership is looking to combine them to have similar language. So pretty much everybody in the state of Florida, the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, leadership, and the committees, they're pretty much on the same page. We had that feasibility study I mentioned on previous episodes that last year we were successful in getting a $200,000 appropriations to do a feasibility study on accepting bullion in gold and silver as legal tender. And that study came out and it raised a lot of questions. So right now where we're at, we're trying to address some of the concerns that were brought up. And the good thing is we've been working with Senate staff and leadership already. So a lot of those concerns that came out in that feasibility study has already been addressed in Florida. So right now, Florida's looking very good. I just got an update today on my bill monitoring. In Missouri has moved through the House already. So it went through all the committees and went through the government efficiency, which is the last committee that it had to go through in the House. So the Constitutional Money Act is on the way to the House floor. And it looks like it's going to pass there as well. And they just posted that the two Senate bills, the Constitutional Money Act, which is basically the same language in the Senate, in Missouri, has a hearing, I think, on the 11th. Let me just double check that. I'll check it in a second. It's in my emails. But yeah, Missouri's moving along. I also, since the last time, I testified in Montana. Unfortunately, Montana is the only state of the 19 states that have some type of sound money legislation that it failed. We got it through our committee, where I testified as an expert witness, myself and other members from, say, the UPMA, United Precious Metals Association, Sound Money Defense League. We were all witnesses, either in support or an expert witness. We got it through the first committee, but then it died either, I think it was on the House floor or the next committee. So that was the first state that the legislation has failed. There's a lot of positive feedback in Idaho. Idaho has probably one of the best bills that I've read. Idaho basically just says anything that the Constitution allows the states to make legal tender, and gold and silver will be legal tender. I'm paraphrasing. I have to look at the exact language if you want to check it out. You can go to Idaho and search for the gold and silver bill, but it's the broadest legislation. It's already passed, I think, one committee. So long story short, gold and silver is getting a huge push and has a lot of attention on it. I think a lot because of the administration and they're them talking about Fort Knox, what's going on with the LMBA and COMEX and not enough gold. So the fact that the economy is kind of going through a correction right now, which I know you and I have talked a lot about, is actually more than a correction. I think it's just time for a global reset when it comes to the likes of 2008 or 1920s with the Great Depression. It's just we're at that point right now. And I think that has been a lot to do with our efforts and the efforts of the Sound Money Defense League, Economic War Room, Missouri Freedom Initiative, and other groups out there that have been pushing gold and silver last year, because last year we had 27 states that we were working in with our partners. This year it's down to 19, but this year a lot of those same states are moving forward and passing committees that weren't getting passed before. So a lot of great things are happening in the sound money movement. And I'm very encouraged with Florida. Florida is Citizen Sound Money's primary state that we're focusing on. And, you know, we've spent a lot of time. We've spent a lot of energy and effort trying to get this legislation through. And last year we educated the legislature. And this year is different. Last year we needed a lot of grassroots raising awareness. We weren't getting any traction. This year is different. This year that resistance isn't there. In fact, it's more a push. It's a push from leadership. Now what we're dealing with is figuring out the exact language that we want to get through in Florida with the feasibility study coming out, some of the legal concerns that the Senate staff has brought up. So a lot of good things happening in the sound money movement.
Okay, very good. So what do you think? You think Florida is going to pass this year for sure? I know we've talked internally about how that went with, you know, different legislation being introduced. And the difference between this year and last year was that this year we definitely felt like something was going to be passed. It was just the details of which were being, you know, bandied back and forth between all the interested parties. Do you anticipate Florida goes for sure this year? And if so, do you think that that's going to spur some of these other states to take notice and say, maybe we need, Florida's done this, they're a big state. Maybe we need to look at this more seriously.
Yeah. I think, like I said, I'm about 95% sure something's going to get through in Florida. Even if it's the second bill. Like, we have two bills. We have the legal tender bill, and then we created a separate bill just in case of our experience last year with all the other states. That bill fails, we at least have SB 134, and I forget the number is in the House, the exact language, of getting rid of the sales tax in Florida. So we're definitely going to get the sales tax through. Like, in the House, I only got two committees. When in Florida, if you get two committees, it's pretty much a guarantee it's going to get through. In the House and the Senate, we have three committees, but there's not a single objection to this, getting rid of the sales tax. And with the main legislation, you're right. Like, the main thing is the discussion. Like, I don't know if I said it on your show before, but there's basically two things you don't want to learn how it's made: sausage and legislation. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting in the way that legislation is made. It's a lot of back and forth, a lot of discussions, a lot of people inputting their views from a legal standpoint, political standpoint. There's special interests as well that are involved. You also have the opposing side, which are potentially the bankers and other associations, or even the municipalities and the counties who don't have the infrastructure to take gold and silver. So now that we are getting like the thumbs up from leadership, these other opposing parties are going to come in, and who knows what the legislation is going to look like at the end. Look, in Florida, our bills, the main legal tender bill, has to go to three committees in the House and the Senate. The way that Florida works, it isn't like Missouri. It gets through the House, and the House bill has to go through the Senate. In Florida, all you have is the House and the Senate, and then if you have two diverging bills, the sponsors determine which version of the bill they want to pass, and then you still make amendments on the Senate and the House floor.
Is there like a reconciliation process between the two?
It's like not a conference committee, because I thought that's what that was. There isn't a conference committee. It's just the sponsors decide which bill they want to push forward, and then the one that loses or decides, like, we'll accept the Senate version and the House version, just drops their bill and they bring it over from the House or the Senate and passes it. So it's a slightly different model in Florida.
Okay.
So that's why it's important to have bills on both sides, because if you have a bill in the Senate and there's nothing in the House, it's a waste of time. They're not going to take the Senate bill over to the House.
Yeah. And I have a couple of questions, but first I wanted to state this. I think Citizens for Sound Money, and I'm going to keep doing this so that people know, because a lot of what we did was never public for about a year and a half, 2 years. So for the last couple of years, Citizens for Sound Money has been working on this, and Citizens have been around for 3+ years. A lot of it was, you said in the first stages was raising money and awareness, and then we moved to the education and legislation stage. So almost the last 2 years, we've been working on legislation in multiple states. We've been helping out in Missouri and Texas. You've testified in Montana. I think we've done some South Carolina and New Hampshire as well, but our big one has been the state of Florida. So I want to make sure that people understand that the efforts here have been ongoing for several years. There's been hundreds of thousands of dollars spent, countless thousands of man hours spent between you and lots of others pushing this forward. So for people to understand, this takes time, it takes effort, and it's something that's been worked on now for multiple years. And if we get it across the finish line in Florida, that would have been worth it, because I think now you can count the other states which may be more open to this, and it could open the floodgates in a way. So that next question I want to ask you was, where do you think like Missouri and Montana stand? I know Montana previously they're the ones that originally it failed, right? Do you think Missouri and Montana are closer to that point? Do you think it would open up once a Florida does it? Or do you think it's just different conversations in those states? And the reason I'm asking is, I want people to understand how much effort there is to get this in one place, and you got to duplicate that again and again. There's a lot of effort here. So give us an idea of what some of these smaller states, how close you think they are.
Yeah. So I think what happens with these smaller states, look, Cities for Sound Money, we are a single issue organization. My job, I have been 100% focused in learning everything I can about money, about the legalities of making gold and silver legal tender. Even this year, working with the Senate staff, I would say that I'm an expert in the legal tender status of gold and silver because of everything that I've gone through the legislative process. seeing how it's done, learning from attorneys, working with other organizations. It's a lot of effort. And, it's one thing to have me defend a piece of legislation. It's another to have a legislator who might have 20, 30, or 100 bills that they're sponsoring. Every state's different on how many they allow, who isn't an expert in the legal tender, who isn't an attorney, who doesn't really understand monetary policy. So a lot of the issues that come up with these smaller states is that the sponsors are throwing a curveball when a question that, say, I could easily just knock out of the ballpark is thrown to a sponsor who doesn't know how to respond to it, which is seen as a weakness to the committees or to the members of the body, and they just don't feel confident. So a lot of effort needs to be placed on preparing the legislators. Like, for example, Bill Hardwick from Missouri, man, he knows his stuff. He understands monetary policy. He's a true sound money advocate. And so I guarantee you, for example, like in New Hampshire too, Representative Keith Amon, Julia Harvey, what's her name? Representative Harvey Bolia. She understands sound money principles as well, so they can defend and so forth. But even though they know sound money principles, they don't know all the nuances on how that might affect. They might not know some of the solutions if there's a fiscal note, some of the potential ways that we could mitigate 2030. Like Missouri had like a $70 million fiscal note because they thought the state was going to have to deal with the same gold and silver. They had to hire a full-time assayer, have multiple branches. And we're like, no, you can just contract out, and the only cost would be adding an API to accept electronic gold and silver. So those are the things that really happen. And we encourage any legislators that are watching now, or any citizens who want to see the legislation pushed through, to contact us, to provide them the information that they need to be able to defend the legislation and articulate the benefits to not just the state, but the citizens and the residents of the state that the legislation is going through. So that's really one of the big things. And also, like Utah or Montana have a much smaller budget than Florida. The reason why the 6 states that have passed the gold and silver legislation, one of the reasons, not the main reason, one of the reasons is they're a smaller state. They don't have to deal with all the economic impact of a state like Florida and Texas. They have a lot more global business, global economic pressures. They have big financial institutions, banks. I mean, Florida and Texas are the two of the 3 largest states in the country when it comes to the economy, landmass, people. So there's a lot of things to go over and really consider that will not be brought up in a small state like let's say New Hampshire or Idaho or Iowa, which are much smaller populations. I think New Hampshire might have 1 million people. Iowa, same thing, maybe a little over 1 million. So Florida has 22, 23 million people. So there's a lot of different things that we have to go over with a fine-tooth comb in these larger states because it impacts so many different statutes, so many different things. So, I mean, I guess that's a long answer to your question of what makes it different. Yes, look, if Florida or Texas passes this, the rest of the country is going to look, what did Florida do? What did Texas do? What are the fiscal note? What's the the feasibility study say? Because that feasibility study, if you're watching now, I don't know if it's public yet, but it was released, I think on the 28th, and we received it a few days ago. And that feasibility study really goes over the history of money and some of the issues and concerns any state looking to accept gold and silver as legal tender electronically or physically, and even creating a state depository, a bullion depository would face. Has some potential solutions, but the feasibility study really did raise a lot of questions, and those questions have already been answered by our organization last year and this year, especially with the version of our bill that we wrote. Now, the version of the bill that we wrote that we wanted to amend, that's going to change because leadership wants HB 999. We were working on SB 132, so there's things that we got to work out with our partners and leadership and our sponsors. But once Florida, think of Florida and Texas, if they pass it this year, like the first domino, I think of the rest of the country looking to do the exact same thing.
Okay. Last one. I know that we're right now promoting the battle. Talk about this tweet from Citizens for Sound Money and how people can help.
Absolutely. So we do legislative updates regularly. I try to do it every week, but sometimes it's every other week. If you join Citizens Sound Money, go to our website, and we're doing a sweepstakes right now. And we also have our Pioneer membership. The sweepstakes right now allows you to win either $50, $100 in Kinesis gold or silver, or a complete Kinesis gold bill set or a gold back bill set. We also post regularly on some of the legislative updates. I'm going to actually write a new legislative update this week for what's been happening. Things change every single minute. And if you want to be plugged in to what's going on, the Sound Money movement, please join Citizens Sound Money. You'll be signed up for our Pioneer membership, and you'll also get our newsletter. We will post it on the blog. We'll post the links like you saw on our Twitter or X channel. With the latest blog posts, we'll break down those updates into different posts from Missouri and each state that we discussed. And it's only $25 a month. $25 a month gets you access to Metal Markup, which is a Bullion aggregator. It's actually better than findbullionprices.com. We also have newsletters. I will be doing quarterly videos, which Rob and I will be doing shortly. In the next week or so, we'll do a quarterly updates exclusive for members, discussing things that I don't say out in public. Like right here will be more in-depth analysis of what's going on across the country. And we're going to be adding new benefits soon for all member classes. So keep an eye out for that update. We just need to finalize some finer details with the sponsors of our Pioneer membership. But soon there will be more benefits than what you see on our website, at least I think 3 more. So really excited. If you want to support our cause, we need as much support as possible, grassroots support, financial support. It's not cheap to lobby across the country or even just in one state. Like Rob said, we have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in our lobbying efforts. Deploying me to different states, hiring other lobbyists in the state to work with me who know the relationships of leadership and so forth.
Airplanes, meals,
travel,
hotels. That stuff's not free.
Yeah. And like here, I'm in Tallahassee, deployed in Tallahassee in a condo because this is our number one priority. It's saving our organization $14,000 by letting me stay here for the entire session. Versus going to hotels and paying for my travel and everything. So we're trying to cut costs. We're trying to be as efficient as possible with our donors' money and save as much money as possible to get the mission of promoting sound money and protecting people's rights to do so through legislation.
Yeah, I think the benefit of having a regular update here is to let the gold and silver community know and let, not only my listeners, we're going to put this as many places we can. If you guys can share it for us, letting the gold and silver community know it's not just about buying and stacking gold and silver, because that in itself doesn't make it money. What we have to do is provide the legislation that supports it and the infrastructure that supports it. So it's not just that we're passing a law. It's that we're passing a law that will enable all of your favorite companies to then come into these states and offer these products in a way at which you can actually make gold and silver money again. And for everybody that's wondering, how do we make gold and silver money again? This is how you do it. This is how the sausage is made. And this is what it takes. It takes years and years of lobbying, legislation, spending a bunch of money, networking, and doing all that stuff so that we can actually have a functioning economy based on gold and silver. And if we don't get a functioning economy based on gold and silver, you're stuck with whatever the state wants to give you. And I think we've seen that the state alternatives aren't good in the long run, especially if it's a fiat version of something. So Daniel, thanks for joining the program again. We'll have you on again. I'll give you, 1 minute to, if you have any last thoughts or things that you wanted to mention before we sign off.
Yeah, no, I think that the joining and going to our website, promoting it, like you said, on Twitter, like we need to spread the word. We have a bunch of updates that come up. Look, we're a small organization. I'm the only full-time employee. We have other part-time employees and contractors that work with us to do social media and everything. But if you are not following us on Twitter, follow us on Twitter. If you're not following us on YouTube, follow us on YouTube. It's at the number 4 Sound Money, at 4 Sound Money for Twitter and YouTube. Now, like when I am not lobbying, I get on Twitter and I post and we do YouTube videos, but we need your support. We're doing some very important work And your support will go towards funding our lobbying efforts and expanding our organization so that we can continue spreading the word. So share our content, share this video, join City for Sound Money, and tell somebody, because once we have 50 members in each state, we will create a state chapter to train you on grassroots lobbying and preparing you on how to push sound money legislation in your state and beyond. So once we make gold and silver legal tender, the next step is to get the states to put a percentage in their of their funds into gold and silver, and then creating curriculum and education through our Sound Money Movement C3 on educating the masses on sound money and the necessity of sound money for a free economy and a free society to exist. So this is just step one, making legal tender. Then it's getting the states to be financially sound. Then it's educating the masses. So the more funds and finances and the more awareness that you can help us spread and raise, the faster we can do this. So I think that's the last, more than a minute, but that's the last thing I have to say about that.
Well, thanks, Daniel, for all your efforts. I know from being on the inside, I can see how much work goes into this. And I will tell you, it's a lot of work. A lot of us are volunteers. Daniel does this full-time for us. A lot of us are volunteers that do it part-time. And we're basically stretched to limits. We have great advisory boards of industry experts, yes, people that come on and help us out that have been in gold and silver for 25, 30 years. We have legal experts that help us. We have lobbying experts that help us. We have big names in the newsletter industry like David Morgan. We have big names in research like Shadow Stats and John Williams. We have Lynette Zhang. We have a lot of people that are providing input as to how we can do this the best for the community. And it's people stepping outside of their normal commercial roles in their own roles and saying, there's a greater need here for us to help the community and build this community. So it's not just about building awareness of gold and silver. It's about building awareness of how do we build an actual marketplace. And so that takes a ton of work. And I want to thank you, Daniel, for your efforts and recruiting people that cause and going down and pounding on doors, at state capitals and things like that. All right, this is going to do it for this episode of the Freedom Report. Thank you guys for stopping by. I want you to know that this is your one-stop shop for where most of this gold legislation is going to go down. It's basically, I've been remiss in not reporting this the last 2 years as I've been more and more involved as much as I should, but we're going to bring legislative updates periodically so that you know what's going on. I want you to know the guys that are doing this for you. I want you to know where you can go if you want this in your state. And I want you to know that this can be as successful as you guys want it to be. If you get active in any way, shape, or form, it can be from a monetary perspective and becoming a member. It can be from just making phone calls and emails. It can be from just providing, spreading the information over social media. Every little piece, if we look at where we started to where we are now, every little piece is built on it to where we actually have a very solid, strong, positive movement here in the United States, kind of take our money back and give ourselves back free markets. And we're really on the edge of it. And any support you guys give is going to help us. So we're going to make sure that we cover it here. I want you guys to watch these videos and do as much as you can support us. Thank you, Daniel, for hopping on.
Thank you.